This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, and in this episode 997 of the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, sponsored by DraftKings. Thanks for tuning in. Football season's right around the corner, and there's no better way to lock in your fantasy dominance early than with Best Ball on DraftKings, where you draft once and ride your roster all season long. And right now, DraftKings is giving all customers a can't-miss offer. Draft one, get one. Enter a lineup in the $15 million Best Ball contest for just $20, and you'll score another Best Ball ticket to play free for a share of that $15 million, giving you a second shot to win big. It's easy. Just draft your team once, no weekly management required, and let your top scorers automatically start each week. Across the whole season, every breakout star, every clutch play, every touchdown will count toward your quest for a share of $15 million. As you know, I'm drafting over there, and I'm documenting things with becoming a Best Ball bro. So you can use the information from that show to help you out as well. So download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now to draft your $20 Best Ball lineup to play for a share of $15 million and get a second ticket to play free for a share of that $15 million. That's two chances to win big without ever setting your lineup again. Draft one, get one, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 18 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. One per customer. Enter the Best Ball $15 million headliner contest by 9/4/25 to get one bonus entry. $20 entry fee required. Reward expires in 30 days. See terms at DraftKings.com/NFL-best-ball. Sponsored by DK. It's a mailbag day. Let's get to these questions. The first question's an email from Curtis. It's something that I'm sure many of you are curious about. But Curtis says, "Hey JJ, love the show. Thanks. With JK Dobbins now in Denver, does RJ Harvey take a big hit? It seems like many believe this will just make Harvey more affordable and an easier draft selection. But will Dobbins play a bigger role than many are expecting? Could Dobbins be the player that we actually want to target? Thanks and keep up the good work, Curtis." Okay, so I've talked about the Broncos backfield a bit this offseason and how Sean Payton has just been unbelievable for running backs in fantasy football through the years, especially through the air. Since 2011, Payton's teams haven't ranked lower than 6th in running back target share in a single season. A big reason I was bullish on RJ Harvey, at least in 2025, was that his competition for some of that receiving work was Jaleel McLaughlin, who hasn't been like a staple for them as a pass catcher during his 2 years there, and then Audric Estime. Estime was someone that my prospect model didn't really love because he's not a pass catcher at all. Now JK Dobbins gets thrown into the mix, and to me, Dobbins is tougher competition than Estime and McLaughlin. I mean, just last year, on a per-game basis, his target share was a little over 10%. And that was in an offense that generally doesn't prefer to throw to running backs. Now, with any sort of running back rotation, you have to think about the roles that these dudes are going to play. RJ Harvey, a rookie, he may not be the best player to have on the field in obvious passing down situations. He has questionable pass protection, and this was actually addressed by Sean Payton earlier in May. Parker Gabriel of the Denver Post, he tweeted, Payton on the RJ Harvey / pass pro conversation, quote, "I know the question is he a 3-down back?" And then Payton continued and he said, "Well, he's going to play on 3rd down, but he can play on 3rd down where the tight end is in protection. There's a lot we can do to suit his strengths." Basically, I don't think the Broncos are all of a sudden not going to try to get Harvey the ball in the receiving game and get him in space. Harvey's still the most explosive back on that team by far. Bo Nix, he's not afraid to check it down. And Sean Payton's offenses, they'll utilize their running backs as receivers, as pass catchers. Harvey missing more 3rd down plays, that's not even a lock. But if he does, it doesn't just completely torpedo his projection. We still want the early down deployment for these guys. He can still catch passes on not 3rd down. But like no sane projection system had RJ Harvey forecasted as a bell cow in 2025 before this JK Dobbins thing happened. That's not how Sean Payton operates. My thinking is that this Dobbins move really makes Audric Estime irrelevant, which is weird because Sean Payton in late May said this about Estime. Quote, "I don't want to say the grade was incomplete, but they just didn't have enough. He's a back that requires enough touches. He's going to get those opportunities. It's the most Sean Payton thing of all time. But I'm not sure how else this would go down. You don't sign Dobbins to not dress him on game days, which means Sundays will come down to Jaleel McLaughlin or Audric Estime. And McLaughlin's someone the team has trusted and someone that they've loved since he entered the league. And he's already getting some love out of Denver this year. My guess is that this is a three-headed monster without injury, where you've got RJ Harvey leading the way and seeing the most receiving work because he's so explosive. Dobbins maybe sees 40 or so fewer rush attempts than Harvey on the projections front, and then fewer targets as well. And then Jaleel McLaughlin is kind of a true change of pace back. He's just kind of sprinkled in. But there's more than enough to go around. This is an offense that should use their running backs quite a bit. So that leaves me with about 185 rush attempts for Harvey and around 65 to 70 targets. He should be ranked as a low-end RB2 in my opinion, because there's still upside there. And I think Dobbins can be considered in like that low-end RB3, high-end RB4 range. Both guys have contingent upside with injury. So overall, I hope this lowers RJ Harvey's ADP, because while he did take a slight hit in projection and his ceiling outcome may not look as good, there's a good chance the drop in ADP is more significant than it should be, but we'll see. This next question is from @LukeAngelica1 on Twitter. It says, how do you feel about Tony Pollard given his approximate 11% target share and 0.88 yards per route run last year? Less bullish of him as a middle round running back? How about versus Tajay Spears, who's at about a 9.5% share with a 1.45 yards per route run? Thanks. So I'm assuming this question stems from the episode earlier in the week on using yards per route run to help us solve the middle round running back dilemma that we face each year. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, I'd hit pause on this one and go back, because it's a fun one, especially if you're a nerd like me. When I was researching all that stuff for the draft guide, Pollard was one of the players that popped into my head. He had about a 12% target share per game rate last year, but he wasn't very effective per route run, as you noted. I actually have him at 0.79 yards per route run. That comes from PFF. Spears was at 1.34, significantly higher. And I actually do think the Titans wanted to use Tajay Spears more than they actually used him last year. He couldn't stay healthy. And we saw him do a little bit for fantasy purposes down the stretch without Pollard. I don't think he's like some stud running back who's an obvious league winner. But I do think he's capable of being a good change of pace player who could steal a lot of receiving work. I mean, Tajay Spears, in his 2 seasons in the league, he's gotten to a 9.8% target share per game rate, and then his rookie year, he was at 14.8%. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Historically, the players that are in Tony Pollard's yards per route run tier, and that's previous season yards per route run, they're not as scary as the guys who are in that Ramondre Stevenson, Jordan Mason, and Chuba Hubbard grouping. But they still don't hit double-digit percentage target shares at a really strong rate at all. So keep that in mind. I would anticipate Pollard taking a slight step back in terms of his overall usage this year. I mean, he had 260 attempts last season. That's not going to be super easy for him to repeat. And then I do think Spears gets a lot closer to Pollard's receiving work this season. So I'm slightly lower than the market as a result of all of this. The next question is from @Mr. Joel Meyer. It says, I've been clicking on Pat Freiermuth a lot in early best ball. He's going around tight end 20, but he's finished closer to tight end 10 in 2022 and 2024 when he played full seasons. He's got good odds to be the number 2 target earner on his team, and this might be the best quarterback he's ever had. What am I missing? So I have a decent amount of Freiermuth as well, especially when I just need some stability at the position in the later rounds. And of course, this is a DraftKings best ball take. But Freiermuth on a PPR points per game basis, he's ranked as a tight end 16, 11, 27, and 13 throughout his career. Arthur Smith is a tight end heavy coordinator. The Steelers don't have a ton of reliable weapons in the passing game. And like you said, Aaron Rodgers has at least a chance to be one of the better quarterbacks that Freiermuth has played with. For me, he projects out to tight end 15. But like you said, he's going after that. I have him at tight end 17 in my rankings. But he's back-to-back with 2 other tight ends in that exact same tier. So I'm fine with drafting him around tight end 15. I feel like Freiermuth and Hunter Henry, they're both kind of obvious grabs right now in best ball. if you just want a high floor option in those drafts. And it's not like these dudes lack a ceiling. They're capable of a spiked week here and there. So you're not missing anything here. I fully agree. This next question is an email. It says, hey, JJ, I want to love Brock Bowers, but I'm concerned that we think he is Travis Kelce, Antonio Gates, and Rob Gronkowski all rolled into one. Should we be more cautious given it is only his second year and Pete Carroll has only produced 2 top 10 tight ends over 14 years as a head coach? They were Jimmy Graham in 2016 and 2017. Keep up the good work and can't wait for the draft guide next month. Thanks. So when it comes to these coaching related trends like this, we always have to look at personnel. So let's look at Pete Carroll's time as head coach with the Seahawks. He got there in 2010, but my data goes back to 2011. So we're pretty close to his whole career in Seattle. During that time, which is 13 years, there were 3 instances where one of his tight ends ranked in the top 12 at the position in PPR points per game. All 3 of those instances were Jimmy Graham. Graham played 3 years in Seattle, so every year he was there, maybe he wasn't elite, but he was at least very usable. And that was when he was arguably past his prime. Now look at every other tight end that Seattle had during the time that Pete Carroll was there. Who's the second best tight end that they had? Gerald Everett, Zach Miller, Luke Wilson, Will Dissly? Let's not pretend it was Travis Kelce who wasn't performing on the Seahawks. The difference between this and the Sean Payton running back trend, let's say, is that the Sean Payton one is favorable and it spans many different players in many different backfields. Had Carroll given us a good tight end score with mediocre tight ends, I'd be interested the same way that I am with Sean Payton's running backs. But this is our information. Pete Carroll has had pretty average tight ends, and he's posted non-elite numbers as a head coach. His tight ends have. But when he had a good tight end, his tight end posted pretty good numbers. Brock Bowers is elite. I mean, the dude's coming off a rookie season where he caught 112 passes with absolutely horrific quarterback play. There is absolutely zero reason to compare Brock Bowers to Luke Wilson and Zach Miller. Pete Carroll also has Chip Kelly running this offense. Kelly likes to push the pace. It's going to be more of an up-tempo offense. And Geno Smith, he's an underrated quarterback who may be able to mesh with Brock Bowers the way that he and JSN worked in that area of the field last year. And there's really not a ton of competition. So I think Bowers is a smash, and I'm not always in on these early round tight ends. This type of forecast, this type of projection used to always be more of a first round pick, but you're getting him in the middle of round 2. To me, he's a pretty great pick and we shouldn't be overly concerned. The last question this week is from Patreon. It's from Michael. It says, hey JJ, I'm really curious to see how your Chiefs projections turn out. It had to be some of the most difficult. Does the total pie grow? How do the targets and touches get broken out? A lot of questions with that offense with huge fantasy implications. Honestly, the Chiefs themselves are pretty straightforward at the highest of levels. As in, they've been top 2 in neutral script pass rate in each of the last 3 and in 5 of their last 6 seasons. They've had a relatively narrow number of pass attempts during that time. Like their passing volume is relatively projectable. Now last season, they had a yards per play rate of 5.1. That was their worst rate since 2012. And that was the year before Andy Reid got there. Meaning they had probably their worst offensive season under Andy Reid in 2024. I think that alone can signal to us that things are likely going to get better. But I'm not ready to say that they're going to go back to like the 2022 version of this offense. We know defenses have played them differently, and we've seen that in Patrick Mahomes' numbers. In 2018, his first full year as starter, he had an average depth of target of 9.5, which is insane. Then it was 8.7, then 8.9. Then it was 7.6, and then 7.7. But over the last 2 years, that ADOT has dropped below 7 yards. Over the last 3 seasons, Mahomes has had 8 total touchdowns on 15-plus air yard throws. From 2018 to 2020, so another 3-year span, that number was 39. Now, to be fair, Mahomes' 15-plus air yard rate last year, it was a career low at 12.9%. The year prior, it was a little over 16%. I do think we're seeing numbers from last year that suggest it wasn't totally the norm. starting at the team level and then filtering into Mahomes. But this Chiefs team is not the Chiefs team of old. They're not chucking it down the field like they used to. And that can obviously have a fantasy impact in multiple ways. First, it means that splash plays are less likely to happen, obviously. But second, it means that those lower A-dot looks might benefit a specific kind of receiver in that offense. Like Rashee Rice, who's coming back from his injury. It may benefit him more than Xavier Worthy. And something that I've said on the show before, but it needs to be repeated, is that Xavier Worthy's sort of upswing in production during the second half of last year and into the playoffs, it wasn't that he just all of a sudden started connecting on deep passes. His average depth of target dropped by over 4 yards from the first 10 weeks of the year to every game post week 10. 25% of his targets were on 20-plus air yard throws through week 10. That rate dropped to 13.2% after week 10. And that's where we saw his yards per route run get better and his overall production get better when he wasn't being deployed as much down the field. So my biggest question is, what happens when Rashee Rice is back? The Chiefs need someone to stretch the field vertically. Worthy seems like the obvious choice there. But if the team continues down their lower A-dot ways, then we're going to see Rashee Rice hopefully pick up where he left off last year, while Xavier Worthy is the more inconsistent player. And then all the while, the other big player in this offense is Travis Kelce, who was legitimately not himself last year, which is likely due to age. Kelce had about a 14% target share before Rashee Rice went down last year, and then he finished the year with a roughly 25% share because he was sort of the default option for Patrick Mahomes. The problem is that he just wasn't his normal self. He had his lowest yards per target, yards per reception, touchdown total, yards after catch per reception, and yards per route run of his entire career last season. So what's this all mean then? To me, it means that we could see Rashee Rice eat. I find Kelce's average draft position over on DraftKings to be really rough, while Worthy probably doesn't have like a top 15 ceiling, but he's at least capable of high-end weeks. But I think his A-dot is going to rise compared to how he finished last season. And then with Patrick Mahomes, I don't really see why we need to pay a premium. It's not to say that he should rank like QB 15. I think it's fine if you want to draft him after Joe Burrow at QB 6. But there should be a pretty big gap from the Elite Four this season down to Mahomes. His rushing profile is pretty average for a good fantasy quarterback, and he's now ranked 11th and 12th in scoring over the last 2 seasons. That's points per game. Is he a candidate to be one of those high touchdown rate outlier guys? Yeah, definitely. It's Patrick Mahomes. We know what he's capable of, and the weapons aren't terrible there. But I don't want that to be the reason that I reach for him, since he's likely not going to average more than 3 points per game with his legs. And then in the run game, I'm probably more bullish in the market on Isaiah Pacheco, because I think that injury just really derailed him last year. But those are my general thoughts. They'll be better than they were last year, in my opinion. But I don't think it's necessary to assume they're going to go back to like their 2022 levels. There's just not enough evidence of that, in my opinion. And as a result, there could be a big winner in that offense, and that winner would be Rashee Rice, as long as he's not suspended, of course. That's it for today's show, though. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you yet subscribe to the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky at Late Round QB. Thanks for listening, everyone. Just a heads up, over the next few weeks, there won't be any Tuesday episodes of the show. I need to really focus on getting this draft guide completed. You'll still get Becoming a Best Ball Bro. You'll still get Perspectives or the Mailbag episode every Friday. And then the Late Round Fantasy Football Show, that's still happening every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern over on the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@LateRoundFF. This is just a temporary thing to make sure I've got the capacity to give you guys the best draft guide possible. It's kind of a dead time for fantasy football anyway. So I'll still be in your podcast feeds, but those episodes, they won't start back up until early July. So a few weeks from now. Thanks for understanding. Thanks for listening. And I hope all you dads out there have a great Father's Day weekend.